Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
With this affirmation, Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, blessed be the judge of truth on our lips, and with sorrow in our hearts, we come together this morning to remember Ben with love and to share with his family our love, our support, our comfort at this difficult time in their lives. We're going to begin the service today with a selection from the book of Psalms. Psalm 121 is a prayer in which we ask God to guard our souls in our going out and in our coming in. And we recite it today as a prayer that God will guard Ben's soul now that he has gone out of our presence and come into God's eternal presence. I'm going to chant a few of the original verses in Hebrew, and then I'll read a version of the psalm in English. Shir lamalot, esa einai ele harim, me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri mehim Adonai, oseh shamayim v'aretz, al yitein lamot raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. I will lift up mine eyes unto the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, creator of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot slip. Your guardian never slumbers. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord will be your protector. The Lord will give you shade upon your right hand. The sun will not harm you during the day, nor the moon at night. The Lord will keep you from all evil and preserve your soul. The Lord will guard your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forever. The 23rd Psalm expresses our conviction that even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we are never alone, that God is always with us and gives us support, strength, and courage equal to our needs. So if you are familiar with the words of the 23rd Psalm, I invite you to join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It is a special blessing at a funeral service like this when family members and friends are able to offer words of love, admiration, even in the midst of their pain and yearning. And so this morning, our first speaker is going to be Ben's daughter, Michaela, then his brother, Mark, a dear friend, John Plumpus, and then the last speaker will be Ben's son, Matthew. So, Michaela?
I'm not a woman of many words, so I have a poem to read for the people here. A light went out on the earth for me the day we said goodbye, and on that day a star was born, the brightest in the sky, reaching out through the darkness with its rays of purest white, lighting up the heavens as it once lit up my life, with beams of love to heal the broken heart you left behind, where always in my memory your lovely star will shine. Thank you.
I'm Mark. I'm Ben's brother. We shared a lot more than I think a lot of brothers shared. One of the things we shared, which I didn't know at the time, was my driver's license. and Ben was 16 and had acquired for $50 a Olds Tornado with, I think, a 442 engine. And he also taught me a great respect for honest police officers in Cherry Hill Township because, I think he hit about 95 or 100 on 295, and I got a summons in the mail, and I went to court, and thank God the police officer said, "That's not the guy." So I was his driver. He lived with me. We both went through a rough patch, and we lived together. I was in a head-on collision with a drunk in med school halfway through, and Ben, lived at my mom's apartment with me, and eventually we were together. But Ben helped me with a newspaper route. We had 334 Sunday Inquirers that we did, and we'd come down the street playing switched on Beethoven at 5 in the morning, and they could hear us coming. But boom, boom, boom with the papers. But Ben had a better job. He was I was his driver, and he would do singing banana telegrams, and I think we hit Don Corleone's family too in Cherry Hill. It's not Don Corleone. I can't say who it is, but we shared a lot. I was introverted. Ben was extroverted. I think, for me, I was into neural networks, and I would escape by, wanting to design rockets and UFOs when I was a kid. But Ben, it's like, he built a network of friends, and the friends that were there for him were his truest, best friends through life, as you probably all know. And, that network that supported him when he was young, he supported us all as he got older. And he grew into a wonderful man for his family, for his friends, for charity, for all the things he's done. And I'm just so proud of who he became and who he was from the start. You don't know what's in a person. But he showed it in life, and he was there for his family. And, engineers and scientists sometimes are inward, but Ben was in touch with his emotions and his feelings, and he knew how to show love, and he wasn't afraid of feeling pain or afraid of feeling fear or feeling his feelings, as they say. And Ben was very much in touch. And he was there for me. He was there for me when we got older. And that part of Ben I just love and respect so much. And, through the cancer, he embraced life. He didn't escape life. And in his life, he embraced life. He didn't escape. And when you think about him being in touch with his feelings and all the pain he went through, and he didn't run from it, as so many of us do, Ben was a hero. He's an emotional hero and a wonderful guy. And when we talk about someone's worth and you think about what he contributed, even in dollars, and you say, what was his net worth? It's not what is in the bank. It's look what he raised for the community, for the kids. And I know the JCC camps did a lot of good for him when he was young. But Ben contributed more than people who have, 50 times my own net worth. Look at how much he contributed with what he did. So it's not what you leave behind that way. It's really what you give, and Ben really was a giver. So I'm very proud of my brother, and I'm glad he's with my mom and my dad, Aunt Sherry and Uncle Irf, and my nanny and Pop-Up, and his sister Merrill, and his Zeta, my dad's dad, Harry, and his wife Bessie, and I'm glad he's with his family. And Jabo from Lion King was with him when he passed, and he was with a true friend at that time. And I'm very thankful. He's a sweetheart of a guy. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm John Plumpus. I met my sweet, dear, generous, funny friend, Bennett Hal Lipitz, 20 years ago. It was Cincinnati, 1 year into the tour of the Broadway show The Lion King. It was 2003. Bennett Hal Lipitz, an unlikely and very British name for a nice Jewish boy from Cherry Hill, who once considered being a rabbi. He told me his name was an extension of his father Leonard's credo to always dress British and think Yiddish. It's true. Leonard told me that himself, actually, when I met him. Leonard, like his son, was a very funny man. One of my very first memories of Ben was the look on his face when he got his very first performance laughs as Pumbaa. Now, hearing 2,000 people laugh at something you've said or done on stage is heady stuff, to be sure. But the look on Ben's face was delight in the extreme. Wide eyes at the possibility of playing with and pleasing the audience, and how much damn fun we were about to have. And they were paying us to do this. We spent lots of time together on and off stage, and we had many conversations about what I called the theater with a capital T. Does the theater make a difference? What are the possibilities of the theater? What could it do in service of society? And my thoughts centered around performance and writing and production. But Ben took this idea and ran with it in a completely new direction. That's when he began his efforts as a fundraiser. He saw that the theater and the inspiration that it provided could power an even wider mission. He saw the possibility of giving the audience an opportunity not just to come to the show, but to give something back, actually, to give a donation from their pocket, from their hearts, which allowed them to take something home, an extra experience home, an experience of belonging to something wider, deeper, and larger than themselves, if only for an evening. But the money that Ben collected has certainly lasted more than an evening. What was the figure raised under Ben's fundraising leadership for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS? $3.4 million. He also did fundraising for the JCC, the Walnut Street Theater, and other charities and causes across the country. That was Ben. Now, working on a big show isn't always easy and fun, and over time we had a number of conversations about how to diffuse tension that had built up in our workplace and perhaps even in the wider world. This grew out of a discussion, I remember, in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we found automobile drivers particularly aggressive and vocal. We half-jokingly decided that if we encountered such a driver and had the opportunity, that we would diffuse the tension and the situation by saying something really nice to them. Well, sure enough, a couple of days later, Ben was driving to the theater and encountered a driver who was animatedly unhappy about Ben's judicious speed. They landed beside each other at the next traffic light and rolled down their windows, and the other guy gave Ben what for, telling him he was a lousy driver. Now, Ben waited until the guy was finished and calmly looked at the fellow and told him that he had very nice hair. This guy went quiet. The light changed and Ben was on his way. That was Ben. So many laughs. One of our lasting riffs that we thought was really funny were variations on the phrase déjà vu. If the feeling that something has happened before is déjà vu, we spun this out ad infinitum, much to the consternation and eye-rolling of our fellow workers. The feeling that you've seen a guy named Moishe before? Déjà Jew. The feeling that you've played this board game before? Déjà Clue. The feeling that you've heard that Johnny Cash song before? Déjà Boy Named Sue. We laughed and laughed for hours and hours. And my love, Monica, would say that we laughed like little boys. We spent 4.5 years together as Timon and Pumbaa. Ben stayed for 19 years until January 2022, when he became too ill to work. 19 years and about 6,000 performances. That was Ben. In the years since I left Lion King, we actually grew closer. He'd call me from the road in the wee hours driving from Salt Lake City to Des Moines. He'd call at 2 a.m. We'd talk for a couple of hours, catching up on family, business, politics, art. I teased him a lot about staying on tour so long that he'd still be doing Lion King when the production was eventually reduced to a few hand puppets and a slideshow. But he loved it. And he used that opportunity to provide for his family. I know that you three know this. But Rosalie, Matthew, Michaela, let me tell you how much your dad loved you. Rosalie, how he kept saying to me how grateful he was for your tenacious love and care, and how profoundly proud he was of you, Michaela and Matthew. And let me just say, for myself, I don't have my own children, but if I did, I want them to be like you. And I told your dad that on a number of occasions, and he only smiled and said, "Yeah, I know." Ben was a great actor, not only because he was able to stay engaged and make each of those 6,000 performances fresh. He was also a great actor in the range of roles he played. If any of you saw him as Yvonne in Art, you know how he could make a pathetic people pleaser funnier than was really comfortable. If you saw him in The Producers, you came away astounded by his virtuosity, making an authentic comic masterpiece out of the desperate, scheming perversity of Max Bialystock. And Ben could teach Nathan Lane a few things. And if you saw him in Fiddler on the Roof, you saw that Tevye was a role that he was born to play. He was Tevye, and Tevye was him. And I think he was most proud of playing that particular part. Perhaps it was because it was a perfect expression of how much he cared for his family and his community here in Cherry Hill. He traveled far and wide, but he still considered himself a nice Jewish boy from South Jersey. In the last few months, I visited him a number of times in the hospital and rehab facilities. He was weaker, but he continued to be funny, saying, "Hey, I'm still Buddy Lipitz." That was his alter ego among some of his friends, a Catskills comedian named Buddy Lipitz. And when we parted on those hospital visits or said goodbye on the phone, we pushed away the shadows, and we'd say, "Hey, pal, I'll talk to you tomorrow." And then he would always remind me that I was his best friend in the world. And I hope it was, and I hope I'll continue to be worthy of that profound honor from a man who had one of the biggest hearts in creation and who took friendship very seriously. 3 short weeks ago, he called to tell me the not unexpected news that he only had a short time to live. And I began to sob hard. And he said, "It's okay. It's going to be okay." He was taking care of me even as his own life ebbed. That, again, was Ben. He told me that when he was gone, he'd be watching over me. And I told him that was good because I sure as hell needed it. And we laughed again. A few days later, we talked and he asked me if I would speak to you all today. And nothing could have stopped me from honoring that request. One of the last times we spoke, he told me that he wanted to live long enough to see Matthew's 18th birthday. I told him that I hoped that it wasn't April 18th because that was tax day this year. And his voice, though weak, gathered some strength, and he said, "By the way, don't tell anybody, but I'm filing an extension this year." Honest. And ironically, Matthew's actual birthday is April 15th. So, and now, that voice, that immensely big heart, and that sense of humor are stilled. And yet, despite that, Ben, my profoundly dear friend, everything remains exactly as it was. I am I, you are you, and the old life that we lived so fondly together is untouched, unchanged. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. And so, to soothe my broken heart, I'll just imagine that you're on another tour, this time to an undiscovered country. And I know you won't call in the middle of the night, but I'll call you. I'll call out and I'll say, "My friend, my friend, my friend, Deja, I love you." Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Gather my papers.
Matthew, whenever you're ready.
Sorry, took a second there. It's kind of hard to speak with a stuffed nose. We've got emotions and allergy season. Saying goodbye to my father today has been one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. On behalf of my family, we would like to thank you all for being here today to celebrate his life with us. I've always known him as my dad, so recently seeing the impact that he's had in all of you here has been very overwhelming, to say the least. My dad's life was anything but ordinary. He spent most of his time traveling the country for work and rarely be able to settle down in our home. My mother, Michaela, and I would spend much time on video calls, sharing memories he could not be around for. But this way of living made all the time we spent together that much more meaningful. My dad did not live this way just by choice. He stayed on the tour for us, his family. He was caring, compassionate, and above all, selfless. He chose to miss out on memories to make sure Michaela and I could have opportunities that he never had. The Lion King has always been a major part of our family. As long as I've been alive, my dad has been Pumbaa. I still to this day look back and laugh at one of my earliest memories of him being on the tour. I had a first grade teacher ask all of her students what their parents did for a living. I confidently exclaimed, "My dad is Pumbaa." I got sent down to the principal's office for, quote unquote, lying to my teacher. Of course, my dad came in laughing the whole time whilst explaining to the teacher and principal that he really is Pumbaa. His favorite part of this story is when the teacher started apologizing to me and saying how extraordinary that is, I shrugged it off and said, "Hakuna Matata." The Lion King has always brought our family closer together. In his well over 6,000 performances, he gave his best and his all every time he took to the stage. That accomplishment stands as testament to his character, motivation, drive, and passion for performance. With all his success, he never forgot where he came from and strove to help people where he could. He devoted many hours to working with Broadway Cares and his benefit concerts for Broadway Live. I had the pleasure of helping my dad with said charity concerts, which for the JCC Open Hearts, Open Doors program. My dad loved helping others, and as an alumnus of the CATS JCC, his yearly benefit concerts raised over $3 million to improve the lives of countless others. I'm extremely grateful I even got to perform with him in his biggest concert, Fiddler on the Roof. My dad had a gift, and he made sure to use it right. But my dad was more than just an actor. He was an amazing friend, coworker, son, brother, father, and husband. My dad loved sharing stories about the times he was my age and definitely made some mistakes, which we heard about tonight. But nothing would have him light up faster than sharing stories about his friends and the memories he made with them. Sometimes I'd even go on to brag about stories he told me to my other friends. After all, it's not quite every day your father invites you to a wedding where you do the worm in front of Chadwick and Kevin Bozeman. I'd hear him night after night laughing on phone calls with friends into the early hours of the morning. He even in some instances kept me awake from how hard he'd laugh. Since his diagnosis, hearing news about his friends on a group chat called The Show every morning always just served as a reminder to me to keep my friends close when everything starts getting too hard to handle alone. My dad's relationship with my mother was and still is very special to me. I'm grateful I got to grow up with a loving and healthy family around me. I got to witness what true love really is every day. Both my parents were willing to make sacrifices for each other, my sister, and myself. They both drove Michaela and I all over the place to our numerous activities. They even took me on college tours all across PA, New York, and New Jersey, despite the fact that my dad was still fighting cancer. They always made time for us because they wanted nothing but the best for us. My dad would occasionally joke with me that happy wife is a happy life, but it was always much more than that. They chose to ride out everything together, and we still choose to do that together as a family. He taught me that giving up certain things is more important than fighting, and that our relationships can always be stronger than we think they are. We only need to care for each other and love each other, no matter what happens. My dad and my mom taught me what it means to be loved, and to love others unconditionally. He told me I'd truly understand this when I have my own kids someday, and I'll find another meaning when that day comes. And I'd just like to end this with one short anecdote from a trip I had last year. Long story short, I forgot to book my ACT seat in Stroudsburg, and we ended up driving 5 hours to Kaiser, West Virginia to take a single test. But almost 9 months later, I've still never forgotten that late-night highway conversation we had. He spoke to me from the heart about how much of a gift it was to be my father, and how he was proud of the man I was becoming. We spoke for about an hour about my future, what I wanted in life, and just some general father-son advice. But the main observation I took away from that conversation was just how amazing my dad was. He was the shining beacon of father figures, the strongest man I knew, able to fight cancer, all while being the same lovable and caring dad he had always been to me. So I speak for all of us in this moment here, that we all take time to reflect over our memories with him and about the person that he was, how his passion, determination, kindness, and selflessness impacted all of us, that he continues to live on in me, my family, and in all of us, and that he will never fade as long as we remember him. We can all try and take a page from his book, forgive a little more, care a lot more, try as hard as we can, and love everyone around us as much as possible. And maybe I speak for many of us here, but I would be honored, and there would be no greater accomplishment in my life than to be half the man that he was. Thank you all for being here. Hakuna Matata.
I want to thank Michaela, Mark, John, Matthew. I mean, you really have blown us all away with the beauty, the sincerity, the heartfelt emotion, the laughter, plenty of laughter that we've had today. And I wondered who was going to say Hakuna Matata. It's good that they left the last word to Matthew to put that into your speech. Beginning with Michaela and the beautiful poem that you read, and talking about how your dad lights up the heavens as he once lit up your life, and I know will continue to light up your life. And to Mark, from the time that he used your driver's license, it's a good thing the cop recognized that you weren't the driver. I mean, I can't imagine how many tickets these guys give out that they actually would remember you. And John, what a beautiful tribute you gave to your best friend, to his best friend, and especially the comment that he had one of the biggest hearts in creation, and that he took friendship seriously. I mean, that's a great honor and a great privilege to be able to take friendship seriously. The rabbis teach us that without friendship there really is no life. And then finally, Matthew, to speak about how you got to see today and all the time how your father was loved and appreciated and admired, but even more how you got to see what he was all about, that he lived for you and your sister and your mother, and the love that the two of them shared is such a wonderful model to you as you continue to grow and as you continue to emerge as the man that he knew you would be. So it is such a privilege for a father to know, and I'm sure he did know, that a son has that kind of admiration for his dad. It's rare, and it's a real blessing, and it's a real privilege that you had to have him as your father, and that he had to have you as his son. And Rosalie, I know you can feel the love here today in the room. That this is just such a privilege to hear about Ben, even in the midst of the sorrow and the brokenheartedness that you have. Broken as your heart is, it is bursting with love to hear from Matthew and Michaela, from John and Mark. So the two of you, one from New Jersey, one from New York, met in Berlin. I mean, where else? On a train, both actors on the 40th anniversary tour of West Side Story. And when you first met him, he was sad and he was hungry, and you promised him that you'd make sure he got something to eat. And on the way back from the buffet, what happened with his plate of food? He tripped and he fell. And he used to say, "I fell hard for her." Literally fell hard for her. And you healed his wound, and you've healed him with your love ever since. Almost 22 years since you were married in August of 2001. What a special life you have had together. What a blessing that you have shared with your children and all the members of your family. We want to remember his parents, Leonard and Marilyn, of blessed memory. He was the youngest of the three children, and we remember his sister Meryl, of blessed memory, who died in 2002, and how much he was blessed with the love of his brother Mark, Mark's wife Carol, their children Nicole and Sarah, and his sister-in-law Barbara, and her husband Peter, and his niece Ava. What a blessing to have family around you who love you and know you and appreciate you, and who can be as supportive during the difficult passage that he had ever since his diagnosis. Ben was destined for acting. He would have told you that it began in the 3rd grade when he was Saul, the Jewish reindeer, in a production of Santa Claus and the Magic Boots. You can't make this stuff up. And then as a student at Cherry Hill West High School, he was mesmerized by the Carter Theater actors from Princeton who were on stage, and he was sitting on the edge of his chair just watching them. And from there, he was an actor, stage and screen, Shakespeare to Law and Order, and of course, Pumbaa in The Lion King. 6,000 performances. Now, I understand that costume he had on weighed 48 pounds and was like 8 feet tall. I mean, just to put that on every night, night after night for 6,000 performances, that's a feat of physical strength, not to mention the emotional strength it takes to go on stage night after night. And I know that throughout the ordeal that he's experienced, one of his great goals and hopes was that one day he would be back on stage and strap the costume on again and be able to be Pumbaa once more. He never wanted the role of patient, but when he was diagnosed with cancer in February of 2022, he fought from the moment he heard the diagnosis. He rocked the chemo, but surgery in November proved more challenging. He was in the fight of his life. He never gave up, but in the end, it overwhelmed him. Throughout his life, he was there for people. He believed in tikkun olam, the concept in the Jewish tradition that our goal is to repair the world, to improve the world, to make it a better place. And he did that. He did that on stage, he did it off stage, he did it quietly. He did it in the philanthropy that he did it in the friendship that he gave, he did it by demonstrating compassion, kindness, and love, and just by being there, always being there for the people he loved. He could elicit a smile and a laugh, he could solve a problem, he could change your life. And it is hard to accept that his smile and his voice will never be heard again. So where do we go when we pass away? Do we go on another tour to an undiscovered country? Or do we go into the stars, as Michaela's poem says? I'm reminded of a passage in Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's Little Prince. And when your sorrow is comforted, you will be content that you have known me. You will always be my friend. You will always want to laugh with me. In one of the stars I shall be living. In one of them I shall be laughing. And so it will be as if all the stars are laughing when you look at the sky at night. And I know that when you look at the sky at night and see the stars, they will light your life. You'll see your husband and your dad. You'll think of him. You'll remember him. You'll remember how he lit up your life. And you'll remember the ideals, the values of compassion, kindness, love, humor, devotion, and constancy that he demonstrated. And when you embrace those virtues, you'll know that he lives not just in the stars above, but in your heart within. Tehi nishmato tzurah Rabbi tzuror hachayim, may his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life, and let us say, Amen. Friends, if you are comfortable standing, I invite you to rise for the memorial prayer, the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bameromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'mahalot Kedoshim U'Tohorim, Kezohar HaRakia, Mazhirim et nishmat Baruch ben Lebu Miriam shalach leolamo began Eden tehei menuchato ana ba'al harachamim hastirehu beseter kenafecha leolamim Utzeror bitzeror hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Bennett Lipitz, who has gone to his eternity. Lord of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the goodness, the laughter, and love that he brought to the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of loving hearts. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Friends, please be seated. One final word as I chanted the prayer in Hebrew. Some of you may have been able to catch his Hebrew name, which was Baruch, which means blessed. And as one rabbinic tradition teaches us that when a child is born, we pray that they will live to fulfill the meaning of their name. And as we remember Ben today, we know that he fulfilled the meaning of his Hebrew name of Baruch, someone who is blessed and who brought blessing to the world. Following the service, the entombment will be at Locust Wood Mausoleum.
Now I ask if you can rise once more, please. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask that if we decide to stay and talk in the lobby with friends and family we haven't seen in a while, please make sure we keep the pathway open so those going to the cemetery will be able to get to their cars. I'll ask the folks to reach you those